So first of all, let's take a look at Project Online. So Project Online does have some reporting capabilities out of the box. So you don't necessarily, for example, if you don't have Power BI licensing, you don't necessarily have to rely on that. You can also use Excel as a reporting option too, if you don't have Power BI access. But Project Online does have some out of the box reports. So for example, if I go into the Project Center here we will get what I call PWA views. So these are views where we can get overall portfolio information, and we can create as many of these different views as we want. They're very simple to set up and configure, but because they are simple, they could also be limiting. So you might not be able to do exactly the types of reports that you're trying to build, because you're not going to have a lot of customization options. But for example, in this case, I have a PWA view where we can see the projects grouped by what department they're in. We can also have things like graphical indicators just to give us an idea of how the overall project is performing, either overall health, schedule, budget, resources, risk, any kind of metric that you think of, we'd be able to measure. Those graphical indicators could be set up as simply toggles that a PM would flip. But they could also be based on actual formulas and variances based on the data that's happening in the project. And then over on the right-hand side, you have a web Gantt view that gives you an idea from a timeline perspective, how are these projects aligning with each other on the timeline. But you can create as many of these different views as you want. So again, this is looking at it projects by department, but maybe I want to flip it around and look at the projects by portfolio, or maybe by the type, maybe by what phase they're in. So you can take that Project Online data set and then kind of pivot it around and look at it from different points of view. Again, this is all out of the box functionality with Project Online. Maybe takes like an hour or so to learn how to do these particular views. But then you can create this and you'll start getting some of that portfolio visibility. And of course, with this, it's interactive as well. So if I want, I can drill down into the details of a particular project. I can also do things like exporting it out to Excel if I want to do additional kind of ad hoc reporting. All right. So Project Center is one of your options. Very simple to set up, but again, can be limiting depending on what you're trying to do. Another thing that we can do is from the resource perspective, if I want to see what resources are working on or what their overall capacity is, there are a set of out-of-the-box views and reports for the Resource Center. So if I go into the Resource Center here I can go in, I could select either a project team or several different individuals. But up here on the ribbon, you'll see a couple options. One is we could look at resource assignments. And what this will show is for the resource that you selected or the group of resources you selected, what are the projects that they're all working on? What are the tasks on those projects that they're working on? And again, you also have the ability to get more of a timeline view. When is that project scheduled or when is that work scheduled? Okay, so again, giving you visibility, but more on the resource side of it. And then if I want to see more graphically, how is this work looking, or how is it comparing to the overall capacity of that resource or the group of resources? There's a capacity planning option. When I open this up, here I'll be able to get a column graph, which will show the line is basically showing that resource's capacity. And then the bars is showing what their current workload is looking like. So the workload itself is coming from either the project schedule or the resource plan that's set up for those projects. Now, the time scale and everything you can set up here on the ribbon. So you could say, what units do you want to look at? So I'm currently looking at hours, but you could also look at days or FTEs. And then what's the time scale? So do you want to look at it in months, quarters, years? And depending on how you have Project Online configured, you can also go down to months and days. And then you could also set some thresholds for heat map, and then what's the date range that we want to look at. So in this case, I'm looking out over, I guess, like an 18-month time period. And everything that I see down here, each bar is basically a month. So I can see here in November and December, we're over allocating that resource pretty significantly. So anytime they're exceeding that overall capacity, it's above the line, you get an idea that you're over allocating that particular resource. And in this particular dashboard, there's several out of the box variations of it. So one is, if you are using the resource plans and engagements capability inside of Project Online, you will see a heat map. In this case, I don't have a lot of demo data for this, but any month where we would be exceeding that resource's capacity, as far as the resource plans, it would highlight in red that they're being over allocated. You also have resource utilization, just similar to the view that I was just showing you, but this is just overall utilization. And then we have utilization by project. So now the bars are color coded by the different projects that they're working on. And this is interactive. So for example, if you wanted to filter out some of the projects, you could go in and then filter it down. You also have remaining availability, and then also work by resource. Okay, so again, it's taking the project schedule information, it's taking the resource assignments, and then it's plotting them out here on these graphs. And then below here, you have a table which will give you more of the raw data where this information is coming from. Okay, and again, just like in the Project Center, you do have the ability to export to Excel. So if you want to do some of your own ad hoc reporting in Excel, you have that capability too. All right. So again, these are some of the out-of-the-box reports that you have with Project Online. Now, what a lot of customers will do, however, is they'll extend this reporting capability by using Power BI. So with Power BI, to take a step back, so with Project Online, all of your project data is being stored in databases. So we have the central repository of all your project data, all your resource data. If you're doing timesheets, all your timesheet data is there. Your issues, your risk, any of your other project management related process. So by using Power BI and connecting it to that data source, then we can start building more in-depth reports and dashboards beyond what I just showed you that Project Online can do. So let's take a look at Power BI. So I'm going to go into some Power BI reports. Now, Microsoft does provide a Power BI content pack for Project Online. That's what I'm showing you right now. When we do implementations with customers, we'll usually use this as a starting point to at least get you started, and then we make modifications or we add some additional custom reports on top of that. But what we're looking at here is in the content pack, there's about 11 or 12 different reports. But when we look at these reports, the first one that we have here is a portfolio dashboard. And with Power BI, if you haven't used Power BI already, Power BI is pretty much a self-service, reporting capability in Office 365. It does have its own licensing requirements, which I do have a slide on. We can talk about that in a little bit. But it's really meant to be user-friendly. You can create your own reports and dashboards. You don't necessarily need a report writer most of the time. But it's all drag and drop, easy to set up. So when we look at this particular report, it's a portfolio dashboard. It's rolling up information about all the projects that we have in Project Online. You can see things like project count, what's the total cost, cost variance, your total work hours, total number of work hours, work variance, number of risk on all these projects, and the number of issues. And then we have a table below here, which shows you the details of each of those projects. And then we still have some KPIs. We have a phase visualization here, which shows all the different projects and grouped into the different phases. As I hover over anything, you can see little pop-ups will come up with additional information about it. And then we also have a donut chart here, which is showing the project type. And the whole idea with Power BI is as we're working with this, we do have the ability to click on anything and drill down into the details of that particular item. So it is all interactive. As I'm clicking on things, I can automatically drill down. So for example, here I clicked on the planning phase, and it automatically filtered all the cards, the table, the donut chart down to all the items that are in that particular phase. Same thing if I go here, I want to look at just the projects that are in execution. There's 7 projects in execution. This is what their total cost is, total number of work hours, and we have 6 active risk and 7 active issues on those projects that are in execution. And then the table you can see is filtered down to that as well. If I want to look at it by project type, I can do the same thing, right? So these are all the enterprise projects. So we have 8 enterprise projects. If I want to look at the IT projects, we have 9 IT projects. So with Power BI, you have this ability to drill down into any of your visualizations. They're all interconnected. So it's a pretty rich, robust experience to the end user. You can also have slicers, like you see up at the top here, where I can go in and I can have additional filtering. So if I just want to see the IT projects, I can click on this and filter it. This is more your traditional, type filtering or slicing. And if I want, I could hold the control key down if I wanted to see maybe, a couple different groups together. And if I click on it again, it resets the filter. So here we have department, by project type, by portfolio. So if I want to see all the 2020 vision projects, or maybe by program. Okay. You can also have additional filters off to the side here. It's really your preference as the report designer. Sometimes it's good to put them right on the actual report. However, this does take up space. If you want to free that space up to provide more area to display other points of data, you could also move them off to this filter pane. And then the users just need to know that they can expand the filter pane to set whatever fields they want. Now these filters on the filter pane, you could have it set up where a filter, when you select a value, applies to all the reports in this report pack, to just a single report, or maybe just to a single visualization, like just the table, but not the donut chart. So you have a lot of options depending on how you want to design the report and set the report filtering up. Okay. The other reports that we have here is a timeline report. So this is more of a traditional Gantt chart type report, where I can use this slicer to pick whatever time frame I'm interested in looking at, and it'll show me whatever projects are active during that time frame. And if I hover over any of these, it'll give me additional details about that particular project. Again, we have the slicers up here, and then we also have the ability to change the level of detail on the timeline that we want to look at. So we want to look at it quarters, years, months, weeks, or days. Next, we have our portfolio cost report. So similar functionality, but now we're just purely looking at the cost. Here you can see this is a visualization where you can have a data card set up where we can see information about a particular project. And as you can see, we can scroll inside this visualization to look for whatever project we want to look for. The other thing too is if I pick on a particular project, you can see here where the visualizations are updated. It filters down just to that particular project that I just selected. You can also see here with the KPI, it's highlighted because this project's basically has a cost variance. It's over budget. Next, we have our portfolio milestones. So this will show you milestones across the projects in your portfolio. So the top table is showing the milestones have been completed in the last 30 days. And then the table below is upcoming milestones in the next 30 days. And then we also get a count on how many milestones have been completed for each project, and then how many are coming up for the different projects in the portfolio. Again, it's all interactive, so if you want to filter in or focus in on something, you can. We also can do risk across the portfolio. So one thing with Project Online is it does give you the ability to do risk management. So as you're tracking your risk and you're logging them for each project, that also becomes part of your reporting data. So here we can go in, we can take a look at risk across the projects from a portfolio perspective. So either active risk or all risk. And then here you can see with the project names, you can see all the different projects that have risk logged against them. And then we have some visualizations here that are plotting them out. Same thing with issues. So we're looking at issues across all the projects. So they were the portfolio reports. There's 6 different portfolio reports that Microsoft provides for you. And then we also can get into some of the resource management reports. So if I go into resource availability, this is similar to what we were looking at in the Resource Center, where we were looking at the capacity planning. But in this case, you have actually several different visualizations all on one page, whereas with the Resource Center, the out-of-the-box dashboard, you had to actually flip between those different views to see this information. So with this, along the bottom, we do have a heat map, so I can see where are the months where we're going to run into some resource constraints. You have the demand versus capacity timeline at the top. So again, the capacity line is the resources overall capacity. How many hours a day are they working? How many hours a month are they available? And then the bars is the amount of work that's been scheduled. And then we also have the availability timeline. And again, that'll highlight anywhere, you can see it right here, anywhere where we're having a deficit, the bar will drop below 0. So if I go into here and I want to focus on one particular individual, you can see that the charts automatically update to whatever I just selected. So this is similar to that Resource Center view that we saw. So we see the line with the overall capacity, but then we can see in 2 of the months, we're over allocating that particular resource. And over here, you can see that big dip in availability that aligns with what the heat map is showing down here. And if I hold my control key down, I could pick several resources and add them. So if I want to look at my overall project team, I can go ahead and do that. Now, this is a report that quite often we do modify for customers. So for example, we typically will have maybe a filter over here where we go in and we focus on a particular team. Maybe it's a particular role or a particular skill set, where you can go ahead and you can set that value. And then what you see on the dashboard is my overall team. Everybody that's working on my team, what's their workload looking like? What's their capacity looking like? We also have a resource overview. So this is more of a resource pool overview. So it's looking at all the resources in the resource pool. What's your overall count? And then depending on how you have your environment set up, you can have it divided into the different departments that they're working for what their area of the org chart's looking like. And then below here, you have the individual resource information. If I go to resource assignments, this is showing me what every resource is working on in terms of the actual named projects. You could also drill down to the task. You could also drill down to the task level as well. But over here, if I want to go in and pick a particular resource, I can then see all the projects that they're working on. What's the timeline of those projects? Is any of that work complete or has been started already? And then how many hours is it? Okay, so again, it's just giving you that over. And then we also have a resource details dashboard. So this is probably good for a resource manager and the and find out what's their overall workload looking like, how many projects are they working on, how many task assignments do they have, or what's their capacity and overall workload looking like, and if you're tracking costs as well, that could be part of this particular dashboard. So you can see up here where we have a heat map, and then down here we can see what are all the projects that they're working on and what percentage of their time is being taken up by each project. And then I can have this slicer here, so if I want to go and look at a different resource, I can go in and select a different resource and get what their workload's looking like. So that's it for the resource report. So you do have 4 different resource management reports you can start with. And then we have 2 project status reports. So one is the project status report overall. So for any particular project, so again, I can use the slicer to select that project. And then I can get some overall information, the project description, work over time, their cost over time, milestones that have been completed or upcoming, the percent complete of the project, a link to the SharePoint site for the project, and a link to the project schedule. And then we have cards that will show you some of the different variances or overall project cost. Related to status, you'll notice this one, other than the issue count and the risk count, it doesn't have really any details about issues and risk. And that's what this second report's for. So with this one, it'll give you more details of your active risk, your active issues for any particular project. Okay. Do we have any questions so far?
Neil, there was one question about the portfolio status as well as the portfolio milestone. How easy is it to tweak the reports, like if they want to change the contents of the report?
So of course, it depends on what you're trying to do, but overall, it's pretty easy. So let me open up Power BI Desktop. So this is Power BI Desktop. Now you could also edit this through the web interface, if you have rights to edit that report. Me personally, and a lot of the individuals that work here at Marquee 360, we prefer to do most of our report writing in Power BI Desktop, then we publish it out to the web into the Power BI service. But essentially, what we're looking at here is that same report pack, right? So along the bottom here in each of these tabs is each one of those reports. And then up here, you see different visualizations. So as I hover over these, you'll notice the little bar pops up, right? So if I click on a particular visualization, over here, you'll see this visualizations pane. And then down below here, you'll see these 3 options. So the first option is the configuration of that visualization. So you'll see different options here. So for example, you can see the axis, the legend, what the values are going to be, what's going to be in the tooltips. And then over here, you have the fields. So depending on what it is that you want to set up. So for example, over here, you can see a little check mark showing where in the data source are these fields coming from that this visualization is using. So if I expand projects, let me expand this a little bit so we can see the names a little bit better. Now I see all the different fields that's in the projects data source or the projects table. Right, so we can see all these. Now, this visualization is currently looking at the phases of the project, but maybe I want to show it by department, right? So if I were to go through here, I can find the project department's field, provided I have data in that. But if I drag this onto the legend, now it's changed that visualization to look at it by department. So now I can see the finance department, IT, operations, sales, and marketing. And again, it's all interactive, right? So now if I click on it, you can see everything else is updating. So that's the beauty of Power BI, is it is smart enough that as I add things to a report, in the background, it's already setting up all the different connections between the visualizations, and they'll be turned on by default. You can manipulate it. If you don't want it to have that behavior, you can turn it off for certain visualizations. But by default, it will set up all those connections for you automatically. So there's really not much else you need to do. Now, this section is the configuration options for that visualization. Now, if you want to change the formatting of it, that's what the little paint roller is. It'll open up the formatting options. So when we go into here, so let me minimize some of this. You can see all the different formatting options. So, do you want to have a title? This is where the title is. So you can see here, it's not projects by governance phase anymore. It's actually projects by department. So I can go ahead and update this. Now you can see it's updated the title over on the visualization. Okay. So the formatting tab is where you can go in, you can change the labels. You can also manipulate the different colors that are going to be used. And these will change, depending on the visualization. So some visualizations will have more formatting options, some will have less. But this is where you can kind of manipulate the look and feel of a visualization. And then the third option here is if there's any custom parameters or any other items that you want to, not you, but the developer of the visualization, whatever they might provide, you'll have other options here that you could configure. Now, that's how you would change any of the visualizations that you see here. So for example, if we click on the table, you can see there's the table. Pretty simple. You just add all the different values. If I wanted to add a field, we'll grab project departments again. And I want that to show up here. Now you can see there's the departments. All right. So again, it's pretty easy, drag and drop. If you wanted to start a new report, so I just started a blank report. Give it a name. And then up at the top of the visualization pane, you'll see all the different visualizations that you have available. A lot of these are going to be out of the box, provided by Microsoft as part of the Power BI solution. So for example, if I wanted to add a pie chart, I can just click on the pie chart. I can position it, resize it, and then over here in the configuration screen, I can then go ahead and start setting up this pie chart. So for example, if I want to grab maybe project name, use that as the values, and then for the legend, we'll keep going with project departments since we know there's data in there. So now you can see our pie chart broken out by the project departments. And if I wanted to have either tooltips or additional data, so for example, like who's the project owner, I can put that as a tooltip. And as I hover over, depending on, in this case, I'm looking at portfolio level, so that's probably not a great example. But if I drill down, I'd be able to see specifics of that particular project. So that's a pie chart. If I want to add a table, whoops, I didn't want to do that. All right, I'm going to add a table. Tables are pretty easy. It's just add the data field. So I can just drag project name. Whoops, project name. I could also just select them here. So if I want to do project owner, let's grab the project start date, project finish date. Now you'll notice on some of these, Power BI will recognize the data type. So for example, I just picked a start date. So see how it's actually breaking it out into the different dimensions of that time date field. So if you want to change that, you can go into here and either flip it to just show the actual value or use the hierarchy. So I'm going to say the project start date. So now you can see it's setting it just as the start date. And I'm just going to add project finish date. And again, we just want to show it as the finish date.
Neil, quick question.
Yep.
Are there any visualization tool add-ins that you can use that are not out of the box?
There is. So One thing that I do quite often working with customers is if none of these are quite meeting your needs, there is a option here to get more visuals. And there is a Power BI marketplace. So this will open up. And then when you go into here, you can then go and look at other third-party visualizations. A lot of them are free. There are some that will be an additional charge if you want to use it. But if you go into here, you can go through and browse and find other visualizations that you can add. You could also search, so if I'm looking for a different Gantt chart visualization, whoops. One thing here is the search is dependent on the category. So you'll notice, I was on something else, so there was no results, but just make sure you're on all if you want to search all the visualizations. But here we can see there's several different Gantt chart options. Same thing if I were to do maybe a grid. You get the whole idea. And if you want to click on any of these, then you can look at more details of exactly what that particular visualization can do. If this still doesn't meet your needs, you can create your own visualizations. That would be getting into more of the developer realm of things. But we've done that for some customers where none of these or anything in the gallery was quite meeting their needs. We can then develop the specific visualization that you're looking for. Now, once you add the visualization to your report,
It's just some hard thing I signed up for.
When you publish the report up to Power BI, that visualization will also get published. Did someone have a question? Okay. So that kind of shows you at least how easy it is to build reports. Again, a lot of it's drag and drop. Now, where it can get a little bit complicated is the connection to these data sources. So that's basically what you're seeing under this fields. So over here, you'll have the report itself, kind of the view of the canvas. The next item down is you'll get to look at all your different data sources. So here I can see the raw data that's coming into this particular report. And if I click on the different areas here, I can then see each one of those tables. And then if I want to see the data model itself, right? So what are the relationships between all these different tables or entities? What are the fields that it's linking on? I can go into here and look at the overall data model. And if I want to set up relationships on my own, it usually will detect relationships, but sometimes you'll have to go in and make corrections to that. Again, it's all drag and drop. So if you want to link, say, project ID from this table to project ID on this table, you just drag them on top of each other and it'll set up that connection. Now, getting the data into the data model, if I go up to transform data here, I'm going to bring this over here. This will open up the Power Query editor. So as I'm doing this, I'm getting a little bit deeper and deeper into this. We're not in the drag and drop realm at this point. We're getting into the raw data. So here I'll see each one of my data sources. So for example, here's the project's data source. And then with the query, this will show me the raw data. But if I want to manipulate any of this, maybe I want to reformat the dates or I want to make some calculations based on this raw data, you can go in, and I'm not going to go through all this, but up at the top here, you see options like create a custom column. Maybe you want to create a formula where it concats some values together and you'll have that available for your reporting. You do have the ability up here to manipulate that data or transform that data into whatever look and feel that you might want. Okay. Now, how do we get these data sources into here? Let me close the Power Query real quick. So in the Power BI desktop, or if you're in the Power BI service, you'll see an area where it's called Get Data. So you can see here up at the top, we have some different common data sources. But if I click the Get Data option, then I can go in and I have a lot of different data sources that I can pick from, whether it be Excel, SQL, Project Online, SharePoint, Oracle, you name it, it's pretty much out here. If I click on More, here you'll see the overall list of all the out-of-the-box data sources that you can use. So for Project Online, if I go down under Other, Project Online uses what's called a OData data source. So if I go into here, there it is. So it's an OData feed. And if I hit Connect, for Project Online, you'll need to know the URL of your Project Online site. And then you have to append the API for the web service. So if I go underscore API, project data. Okay, so whatever your URL for Project Online is, you just append this onto the end, and that'll connect you to the OData data source. When it makes that connection, you'll then see all the different tables that are available from Project Online. So again, the most common things are going to be things like projects, resources, tasks, issues, risk. But if I'm creating a report on timesheet entries, I want to monitor who's submitted their timesheet or who hasn't. You'll go down here, you'll see there's some timesheet tables. And I'd be able to pull that into the report and then build my report to check on timesheet compliance as an example. All right. Any questions with this? All right. So that's Project Online. Now, you also have Project for the Web, which is a relatively new entry from Microsoft into the PPM space. So with Project for the Web, for example, this is a Power App that's displaying Project for the Web projects. And you can see here, I can do some things like graphical indicators and whatnot through the Power App. And if I drill down into a project, I can get more information about that project or what phase is the project in. We'll see if this comes up. I was having trouble earlier, but this will show you the project schedule from Project for the Web. Looks like it's still not coming up for me. Nope, sad face. But that'll show you the project schedule. Similar to Project Online, though, is we can connect Power BI to all the Project for the Web data. So if I go up to here, this is a set of Power BI reports for Project for the Web. So again, we can have a portfolio dashboard, which is rolling up the information for the Project for the Web projects. So we can see it by progress, how much effort's been completed, how much is remaining, by PM, and then we have a table below here with all the different projects and what some of their progress has been, or some of their overdue tasks that you see here showing up in red. Just like in Project Online, we can do a project timeline view. So depending on what it is that I'm looking at, there you are. We can see those projects from a timeline perspective, milestones, the resource dashboard, resource assignments. The one thing with Project for the Web is today it doesn't do quite as much as Project Online does, so we don't have as much reporting or as much things to report about. But you can see, a lot of your basic project management functionality you'll be able to do reporting on. This is an overview of task, and then you have your project timeline, your work, and then your timeline, based on the task that you're assigned to. One last thing I want to bring up is with Power BI, from a project management perspective, one of the really nice capabilities with this is you can set up subscriptions. So if you have a executive team or maybe a project sponsor, you want to make sure they get the latest status report or the latest portfolio report the first of every month, or every week, whatever the schedule might be. You can set up subscriptions in Power BI so that it'll automatically send them an email with that report. It'll include a little snapshot of the report, but it'll also have a hyperlink to Power BI so that if they want to do any drill downs or look at more details, they have that capability. But this is a great feature. The other thing is you can also export any of these reports to PowerPoint, to PDF, or to Excel. So if you need to email it to somebody as a PowerPoint, PDF, you could do that. If you want to export this data into Excel to do some ad hoc reporting on your own, you can do that too. All right. Any other questions? Topeka, should we show the Power BI licensing slide?
Sure.
Aaron, do you want to call that up?
Sure, I can take over and share my screen.
I think you might have to.
Can you see the bottom?
I think it's the top, the different license types. I can't see it.
Oh. Let me see.
Neil, do you just want to talk through it?
Yeah, I'll talk through it real
Okay.
quick. I was trying to see if I still had the slide. I guess I don't. So for Power BI, there's several different options depending on what you're trying to do. Some of it will have licensing implications. So the Power BI desktop that I was just showing you, that's more of an individual user to build the reports or to build your own reports. That is where that's considered a free download, a free license. So you don't need any Power BI licensing to use that. That's good if you're going to create your own reports and maybe you're going to save it as a PDF and then distribute it that way. There's also what they call Power BI free. Again, that's for personal use, similar to Power BI desktop, but it's purely a web version of Power BI. So you can create your own reports, your own dashboards, but it's for your personal use only. And that's the key thing with this. If you want to use the Power BI free, you can't share it with anybody. It's basically limited to your own personal use. If we want to start sharing these reports with other users, then we have to get into the two different licensing models of Power BI. There's a Power BI Pro. That means any reports that you publish and you start sharing that with other individuals, you'll be able to do that with Power BI Pro. The one catch with that is the people that will be looking at those reports may also need Power BI Pro. The one exception to that is the next license up, which is the Power BI Premium license. The Power BI Premium is sort of like a site license. So it's more based on the overall capacity of the organization. So you'll be able to basically have anybody in your organization look at the Power BI reports. So Power BI Pro is about $10 per user per month, whereas the Power BI Premium, since it's more of a site license, is about $5,000 per month. So at some point, I guess it's around 100 users or so, there's going to be a break-even point where it may make more sense to go to the Power BI Premium. All right.
Thanks, Neil.
Yep.
Sorry, I got too fancy on the fonts.
It's all right. Yeah.
I know we're coming up on the top of the hour, but I did want to mention that we do have Power BI workshops. I know I mentioned workshops earlier, but we do have a specific Power BI workshop to fit wherever you're at in your Power BI journey, whether you're a beginner, your organization, doesn't really know how to get started, or you need some tweaks. We have a ton of different types of workshops, and you guys can view those on our website. If you want some extra details, or reach out to us, we can go through and see what you need. Also, I put the survey link in the chat window. If you guys want to fill that out, that would be awesome, so we kind of know where we're going, how we're doing with our Productivity Thursday series. And also, I put in the link to register for our next upcoming months. We do have resources on our social media channels. So we post the webinar recordings, we post blogs, any articles that Microsoft posts, news. So if you guys look at those resources, I think they'll really be helpful. As always, thanks for joining us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our